Alrighty, welcome aboard and thank you for tuning in to the Heavy Metal Truckers. We are your hosts. I am Pincushion and that is Doppler. I almost forgot who I was for a moment. So yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, so let's try not to screw this up because the last time I tried to do this I screwed up. But so as you guys may be able to denote from the shirt I am currently wearing, we are... What the fuck?
Whoops!
You dumb.
I can't see myself. I have no
That was
idea how all of
fucking
a sudden it just I was like, oh shit! I hit something apparently.
All right. Well, as I was mentioning, as those of you that can see my shirt, we are doing an album overview or analysis of Opeth's latest album, The Last Will and Testament. 'Cause I almost forgot the name of that fucking album. So, I think we did go into the first time around explaining how kind of we discovered Opeth and whatnot. So, if you want to, you can go over it again,
the
or you can
first
just
album.
go. Yeah, you can just
Or
go
the
straight
first
into
song.
it. Yeah, first single. All right, so I'll just let you do your thing.
Anybody wants to hear all that, they can go back to that video, the first song that we did. But as for the album, it was garbage. No, I'm just kidding. So, as people saw the first album, I've never been a big Opeth listener because I never really got into them. So going into this album, I didn't really have high or low expectations because really all I had to go off of, for the most part, was the song that we had done the review on.
Correct.
And so I don't know if that hurt or helped me, but so be it. That's what we had, or what I had. So the album has 8 or 9 tracks. I can't even remember now.
It has
8?
A total of 9 tracks.
9? 9? Okay, 9.
Wait,
I know
I
it's
have
got
the shit here.
Yeah.
No, you're
got
right.
all
It does. It's got 8 tracks. My apologies.
Okay, so 7 paragraphs, and then the one called
A Story Never Told.
Crap. Story Never Told. That's right. Now I remember when we first were looking at the songs, we were like, "Why are they named whatever that squiggly thing is and the number?"
Yeah.
And eventually
so
found out
confusing.
that squiggly thing means paragraph.
Because I completely forgot what it meant.
Yeah, I did too. But we eventually figured it out. And basically each song is a paragraph. And, one thing that was really cool about this album was the fact that the entire album basically told a story, or was a story. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what it was about, because if you want to know, you can listen to the album yourself. But it, it's tied into the title of the album, The Last Will and Testament. There's a reason it's called that.
Yeah.
And basically, the songs were called paragraphs because, in a way, that's what the songs were. They were a paragraph in the story. Which I thought that was really cool. I haven't seen many bands do that, where the whole album basically it tells a story. Each song continues the story on, which makes for an engaging album, because you listen to one song, you go to the next one, then you're like, okay, what's the next, and it gets you wanting to listen to more. So it's a cool idea. Originally, I was like, is every Opeth album like this? Which I've since learned they're not.
Yeah, no, this is like to my recollection, because of fairly not the biggest fan of them, but I greatly enjoy their material. And well,
Right.
I have various favorite groups depending on the genre, but yeah, Opeth is a group that I really enjoy. And think my wife might actually would call me a fan of them.
You own their shirt,
That means nothing.
but yes, actually, I think you own 2 of their shirts. But anyway,
No,
maybe
just
you only
one.
own the one. That's right. That's right. You said that was the first one. That's right. I remember now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, getting off topic. So, you know, I really enjoyed that aspect of the album because it added a whole different layer to the whole album that you don't get with most other albums, right? And musically, the whole album fit within, or mostly, the last song was a little bit different than the rest of them, but the first 7 were somewhat similar to each other. I mean, there were differences, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't huge variations in them and I think that was because it was telling a story. I think if you had went too far away in terms of music or sounds, it might have taken away from the story.
So, which I'll be able to better. I'll I'll go into my ideas on that whenever it gets to me, but
Yeah,
you're not
you also have more
entirely
knowledge.
wrong. Yeah, you're not entirely wrong, but there is some extra aspects to it, which I'll go in on my part.
You like I said, you have more experience and more knowledge of Opeth than I do, so you definitely will be able to put more light into that stuff. But anyway, and like the first song, they all basically were a mixture of a bunch of genres. I mean, the overriding thing was really more or less progressive metal, but not over the top progressive metal. I said that in the song that we did. That they do a really good job of being progressive without being so progressive that either A, they look like they're showing off, or it becomes hard to follow the music or gets distracting. Um, because there's a lot of bands out there that do that. They show off, or they get it's too progressive to the point that it gets distracting. But you said Dream Theater. Dream Theater is obviously more progressive than Opeth
They
is,
are
but
more
they're
progressive, but they also consider themselves progressive metal. Opeth,
right.
they more so describe themselves as just like a death metal band. Just the audience and like critics have called them more progressive just because of how they go about with their creation.
Well, that and Opeth uses a lot of different genres. I mean, they mix jazz elements with progressive elements with
And that's just because they're not afraid to push the envelope, which again, it can be a sign of progressiveness within the metal genre, but they do it without they do it without confining themselves to that label.
And I think the one thing that kind of lends it progressive is the fact that they mix them all together in one song. They'll do that, and along they'll have the black metal, they'll have or death metal, whatever you want to call it, and then they'll use symphonic elements or gothic elements. So they mix a lot of things together. But they do it well.
Yeah, well, Mikhail has said numerous times that both him and the bandmates, they do what fits, and that's the most important part.
And I feel like, musically, I wouldn't call the album a happy album musically, which when you listen to the song and the lyrics and understand what's going on, it makes sense why it wouldn't be happy music. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail.
Dude. Dude.
Yeah. But I enjoyed his vocals. I like that he mixed the cleans and the harsh vocals. It worked really well on this album. It fit this album because of the story that he was trying to tell. In this, I feel like if he had just done straight cleans or just straight harsh vocals, it wouldn't come off as well.
No.
I think the mixing the two the way he did, just it made it work that much better. In terms of what they were trying to get across in the album and fit with the theme of the album. And I know you said that up until this album recently he had gotten away from the harshes, so it's kind of cool to see him do that and mix them together really well, because he does harshes really well.
Oh yeah, he's amazing at what he does.
Yeah, and I think The only knock, which I mentioned this the first time, and I still don't know what the hell it is. There's
Mhm.
one. The only knock I would have on this album is that I've listened to this album like 3 times now.
Mhm.
Is there's just something about it that is missing for me. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. Even after 3 listens, I
I
still
got a
can't figure it out.
I've got a question for you because I
Mhm.
think I know now what it is. Have you solely listened on that Blue Tiger headset?
I know 2 of the times were. It might have been all 3. I can't remember, but 2 of the times definitely were.
That's partially why, and I'll
It
explain
it
whenever I
could
get.
be.
I it is because I'll explain whenever I go into my part.
Um, and it's really the only negative thing I can say about it, at least for my. And the one thing that's missing, it may be what you're saying, could be something different, could be just something that's related to me.
I
That
know
somebody else
if
listens to, not. You know.
I so you all I'm gonna say is this album's interesting and I understand why they did what they did.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like it.
I would agree with that.
I can't say a lot because yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away. Um.
I'm gonna be going
But
into more detail on my bit. I can't
yeah, well,
not.
you did the
Yeah,
first time too, but
dude, I actually I
um.
have notes, like
Oh dear Lord.
notes. Like I'm not gonna go into everything,
So
but yeah.
yeah, it. If even if you're not a big Opeth fan, if you're just a a fan of music and lyrics and metal, I would recommend listening to the album because this album does such a good job storytelling. That's one thing I've always liked Nightwish. They're good storytellers. This was like taking what Nightwish does and expanding it through an entire album with one story.
It felt like
It it it,
Imaginarium.
it did. But even with Imaginarium, the songs, while intertwined, the stories weren't all the same. Like one that.
Mm-hmm. And that's true.
But in a way, I definitely see what you're getting at. But like I said, yeah, it's like takes what Nightwish does because Nightwish is a storyteller, but they do it like in each song really. Now the whole albums will have a theme, but each
Not
song will
to
have its own
the
little
extent
story.
like
Whereas this was the
this.
whole album. Yeah, exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying. They took it to a whole different level here because the whole album tells a story, and each song continues the next part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't be surprised one day if Nightwish does an album like, or if Tomas releases a solo album doing something like that, because it's something I could see him doing. But anyway,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, so yeah, I would definitely recommend it to others out there, because I think overall you did a phenomenal job, or they did a phenomenal job on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, out of 10, I would personally probably give this an 8.25 still,
Okay. I gotcha.
which would be definitely in the top third of ratings for albums that I've rated on here.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so for mine, originally whenever I listened to this, just for the most part, it was difficult for me to actually just give a full analysis and review on because I would be listening to it in my car. And like the way that Opeth composes is so amazing with pretty much every album they've made, even the ones I'm not the biggest fan of, like Heritage or Heritage is whenever it got a little interesting for me because they went more of a jazz aspect, and I wasn't, or Mikael kind of went away definitely from doing, well, no, because they were still growling in that, but it was. It was more like they started introducing more jazz into it from my recollection. It could have been done on an album previous to that because I do remember that was Pale Communion, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, like it. I have a problem with it going essentially into a trance because of just you can't. It's difficult to for me. It's difficult to focus with Opeth, and that's not saying it in a bad way. It's just it sucks you in and it takes you on on a ride. It's an experience. So the same way that everyone says Tool is an experience, but half the time Tool is an experience because you're fucking stoned out of your goddamn mind. Bring on the hate. Not to say the Tool is a bad group. I'm not trying to say that at all. Just most of the fans I've spoken to, they say that it's an experience, and half of them were tripping on mushrooms whenever they went to see them. So that's the reason I say that. But I finally had the chance not too long ago. It was probably a couple days ago, actually, to get my headphones on, and I was using some Bose Quiet Comfort headphones, in specific the 35-2, and I really took the time to listen and be able to make notes and just try and focus. And what I discovered was that they worked stereo imaging in this album, because what's actually occurring is the instrumentals are going on, there's different aspects they're placing in to kind of set the mood and set the stage for what's about to come about, because paragraph 1 begins with footsteps and the sound of a door opening and closing, as though you're getting ready to go into the room where the last will and testament is about to be spoken, of this father who has passed away, and this was during the era of World War II, if I remember correctly.
It's either 2 or 1. Yeah, I don't remember.
Pretty certain it was World War
II. It was
II.
after one of those wars. Yeah.
But what's occurring is you have these instrumentals, but there's these different voices that are going on like the right side, almost right center, left side, and it's essentially what I gathered from it was you're hearing different parts of the room speaking and giving their own perspective of everything going on. And that is likely the reason you potentially felt something was missing, was because in that scenario, you're going to hear if someone's talking over on the far left side, you're going to faintly hear it over on the right. Or if your headphones are running in mono. I mean, they're trying to be stereo, but they're in mono. So there's a bigger soundscape that you're not going to fully grasp, and you'll miss a lot, because of course with death metal that has progressive elements, there's things that are thrown around, kind of sprinkled in here and there, that greatly keep your attention and keep you intrigued, but also the various time signature changes, which I like. If I was more knowledgeable on time signatures and the changes, despite me kind of considering myself a musician, then I'd be able to comment on it more. But I mean, with paragraph 1, wow, did it set the stage, just because the instrumentals, they crept in, and then once they crept in, they just punched nicely, and there were keys that were kind of almost like an organ that kind of played in a creepy manner, but to help set the mood for just this dismal setting of they're about to read the final will and testament of a person that has passed. And then all of a sudden, we hear Mikkel in an album for the first time in like a decade at least. He growls, and he just sets the album ablaze. And from there, I wrote a bunch of notes on this, but since we are a little crunch for time, I'm not going to go into everything. But Mikkel, he just does so many varying aspects with his vocals. Like, he has some he'll do in a lower register that has a little bit more body. Some he'll do in a more falsetto, and there will be trade-offs between Mikkel's vocals and then this personified voice that's supposed to be the father, who is speaking through this last will and testament. And you discover throughout all of this, the father had some dark secrets. And that's all. Well, he had some dark secrets. To make a long story short of the album, dark secrets were kept. Half the family is not actually family, or they're not. Basically, they're just not legitimate. And the heritage of the line is passed on to someone that in that time wasn't necessarily that it was frowned upon, but it was beyond unorthodox. So, considering all the subject,
back then, sure.
yeah, considering the subject matter in mind, the instrumentals were beautifully placed to be able to accompany this, including the fact that Jethro Tull is playing the flute on it.
Yeah, one of the guys in Jethro Tull is, yeah.
And then there was also a harp playing that I heard in one of the tracks. I don't even remember.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't remember. I will say that paragraph 5 was probably one of my favorite parts, just because of how it was collaborated. Paragraph 6 made me really laugh because the opening pretty much sounds like Can't Drive 55 to me. Like, I know someone that's more progressive metalhead is probably gonna say, well, the time signatures don't actually line up, and if you actually notice on this bar, I'm like, dude, I don't fucking care. Let's go to the average listener, give them Can't Drive 55, Van Hagar's version, not Sammy, and then give them paragraph 6. The average person will be able to make the connection, like chord progression wise, if I'm saying that term correctly. Yes, they are very similar. Now what I do find fascinating is that the disembodied voice of a female you'll hear at least one time in the album. I can't remember if it's more, but at least in
I think it was just one track, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it was actually. It was either in paragraph 1 or I think it was paragraph 1. You hear the voice of a disembodied woman, and we don't know if that's the daughter in the story or if it's someone who's deceased that's already passed on, but that is Mikhail's daughter. And I thought that was really cool.
You all right?
Yeah, no. My wife is a very interesting and fun person. I said disembodied voice and all, and she just went, woo! So yeah, the way everything was composed, the way the trade-offs went in the vocals to people talking amongst them, people talking and having conversation, the father, Mikhail, telling the story. Just wow, I haven't heard anything like that before to my recollection. And it is also just, I love how, as Doppler mentioned, they can be progressive but not go overboard with being flashy. They do what is necessary for the track, and they do it to give some flavor but not try to outshine the entire piece.
Yeah, it's musically, it's still easy to follow, which is big.
I absolutely loved it. Now, of course, for someone that is mostly into black metal and classical and like some old school 80s metal, we're talking like Priest, and then really into, like, I'm going to say Sabaton because they have a lot of 80s metal influence.
Yes, they do.
They, you kind of just listen to it for what it is, and if there's anything that's blaringly obvious, then you'll go, oh, okay, that track is kind of different. With progressive and the Opeth being the way they are, in a sense, yes, most of the tracks did similar, kind of sound similar in that respect, but for those that are into progressive metal at all, or into the progressive side of metal, then you'll be able to appreciate and notice the differences within the time signatures, any kind of just tempo changes, which happened numerous times and really impressed me how they made that work. But you'll be able to notice that. You'll be able to notice the different flavors of instrumentals that were brought in, taken away, sprinkled throughout here, there, and just making great use of the stereo image. But overall, I listened to it on my headphones and looked along with the lyrics to give myself a better understanding, because of one knock I will have with this album, especially for being in my car, and this might also have to do with the stereo imaging as well. Sometimes the vocals were not easy to really hear or understand what was being said, because they were kind of more just over the level of the instrumentals, which I mean isn't a bad thing, but because it also fit what was going on. And there was also moments where it was like spoken word but singing it, not so.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, it was more like just kind of vocalizing, bringing vocals to a spoken word. So there was parts of that at the time, my first couple of times listening to it, I wasn't really hearing it or really hearing the enunciation that well, and so I was kind of knocking it in that aspect. Like, I know he's good at what he does, but I don't know what the engineer was thinking, because I can't hear this. I understand now where they were going for, but in some aspect, not everyone is going to be able to listen to this on the greatest headphones just in their own space or whatever. Like, it's going to be listened to in a car. It's going to be listened to in fucking AirPods, Galaxy Buds, whatever the case. And unless it can sound distinct within each of those, to me, there is room for improvement. Not to say that it's bad, there's room for improvement. And of course, that is just my perspective on the matter. Every progressive metalhead out there are probably going to argue to hell and back with me, and that's completely fine. I do not care. I know I have some hot takes on the matter, but these are all based on
everybody's opinions are different.
Everyone's opinions are different, and everyone's opinions is subjective, and I understand that, and that's fine. I do not mind. But with all this being said, my rating is one of the highest I've ever given on here. I rate this album a 9.5.
I think that ties the highest you've given.
Okay, then it was probably Priest that I gave the 9.5 to. But yeah.
I can think. Yeah, I think it might have been. I think there's been 4 albums you've given a 9 or higher to. I can think of 3 for sure.
It's difficult though, for me to.
Yeah.
But
the other one I think was a 9, and then I think you had 2 9.5s. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it had the vocals been able to be completely discernible in every media source I played it through, I potentially would have given it contemplated a 10, because to me this album just had everything I could want from what it was. It was just phenomenal. So for once, even though there's multiple groups, I'm glad I have their shirts. For once, I have a shirt from a group from an album that I'm proud to actually have, because I screwed up.
Yeah, it goes to the album.
I screwed up whenever I got the Berserker shirt from Amon Amarth, because I was not that much of a fan of the actual album. It was just, in some aspect, very generic for what it was. But then again, one of my favorite albums from Amon Amarth is Deceiver of the Gods. So, but that's some older stuff. But anywho, that was my perspective on it. I had a lot more to say on it, but it was I was noticing things, writing things down just because things kept on jumping out at me, and I'm like, I don't know if I should notate this or not, but like I said, if I were to go over and talk about everything that I've written down, we would be here for over an hour. But
People will be
anywho,
like, "Shut up, Pincushion, shut up." No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. So if you guys do want another video where I actually do go over like every aspect of the notes that I have, then I'll find the time and I'll do it. And then I'll do it, and if Doppler wants to be a part of it, then by all means.
What's that?
If our audience actually does want me to go over all of my notes that I wrote
Yeah, I
down,
mean, if they do, yeah, we can do that, and I can throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
We'll see what they say.
Now, what I will say, the thing that makes the last one, A Story Never Told, so interesting is the softest track on the album.
Yeah, it is.
But it's a complete departure from the rest of the album. And
Yep.
it is so fitting because of the subject matter of the father having hope. And that sense of hope and encouragement for those that are about to carry on the heritage is what makes it necessary for it to be a bit softer and have a more uplifting feel. So those are my final words on it, unless someone wants more, and I doubt anyone wants more, to be honest. But anywho, do you have any further words on this?
Not that I can think of.
Cool, that works. Peace, fuckers. No. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, keep rolling heavy.